camera. You give it, give it, off, give it, off,
give
down,
it,
down.
give it.
Hello everyone, I'm Alex Navarro, and welcome to another wicked fast edition of Here's What You Missed here on Screen.com. This is where we, the editors of Screen, take you through the entirety of a film franchise or TV series journey so far in the hopes of getting you plenty caught up in time for the latest installments. With this Friday marking the launch of the fifth film in the Fast and the Furious franchise, appropriately titled Fast 5, now seemed a perfect time to take a look back on the most hallowed of street racing film franchises, the series that helped solidify Vin Diesel as the go-to gruff-talking badass and to launch the career of super-duper handsome boy Paul Walker. Now strap yourself in, make sure your NOS tanks are full, and come with me on an illegally fast ride through all 4 Fast and the Furious films. F. 10 years ago, we were first introduced to the ruggedly handsome and utterly fantastic, if slightly monotonic and emotionally stilted characters of Brian and Dom in 2001's The Fast and the Furious. The first film opens with a bang, showing us a gang of mysterious street racers speeding around in careful concert while executing a daring heist on a 16-wheeler. Enter Paul Walker's undercover cop, Brian, who has been tasked with infiltrating LA's hilariously awesome underground street racing scene to get a beat on who these hijackers are.
What the hell's going on around here?
Street's closed, pizza boy. Find another way home.
Goddamn street racer.
He does so by trying to cozy up to the big dog pit bull of them all, Dom, played by Vin Diesel.
It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
Dom heads up a gang of the local racing elite, including the hot-headed Vince.
I like the tuna here.
Bullshit, asshole. No one likes a tuna here.
Yeah, well, I do.
Watch your back!
The gear geek Jesse.
Something about engines that calms me down. You know?
Dom's tough-as-nails girlfriend, Letty, played by Michelle Rodriguez.
I smell skanks. Why don't you girls just pack it up before I leave tread marks on your face?
And Jordana Brewster as Dom's super hot sister Mia, who you just know Brian's gonna hook up with at some point down the road.
You know, I think we should go out sometime.
No, I don't date my brother's friends.
Yeah.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, Brian has to show these badass racers that he's straight bona fide, which leads to one of the series' first great lines.
I need NOS. I need NOS.
Followed by this fantastic street racing sequence, which features an all too brief appearance by Ja Rule, followed by tons of 10-second cars racing what honestly feels like a lot longer than 10 seconds. But who's counting, really? Brian's eventual crash and burn leads to a bit of speechifying by Dom.
Dude, I almost had you. You almost had me. You never had me. You never had your car.
Followed by the introduction of the film's resident bad guy, Johnny Tran. He and his gang of street racing thugs make for prime suspects in the hijackings, and after making nice with Dom, Brian works his way into the group. And Dom's sister. The movie then spends quite a bit of time flitting around Brian and Dom's burgeoning friendship, with Dom even confiding the psychological reasons behind his outlaw ways to Brian.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time. Nothing else matters, not the mortgage, not the store, not my team and all their bullshit. For those 10 seconds or less, I'm free.
But after a botched raid on Tran's warehouses and the realization that Tran actually wasn't behind the hijackings, Brian is forced to acknowledge that it's probably actually Dom and his crew that's up to no good. This leads to the world-famous confession from Brian to Mia about his true job.
Mia, I'm a cop.
Get off of me, Brian!
The movie climax is pretty much the only way it could have, with a Road Warrior-esque action sequence of a botched heist, followed by a shootout with Johnny Tran, and an inexplicable drag race showdown between Dom and Brian. Where Brian, shirking his policeman duties, actually lets Dom go free. Oh, also that Jesse kid totally gets smoked. Following the absurd box office success for the first film, Universal quickly greenlit this terribly titled sequel. Unfortunately, Vin Diesel was super duper busy starting up that stillborn new action franchise of his, Triple X, and thus was not available to reprise his role as Dom. But when you've got the devilishly handsome, ridiculously chiseled visage of Paul Walker on hand, that'll do just fine. In Too Fast, Too Furious, Brian has fled to Miami and has ensconced himself in the local street racing scene alongside Tej, a wisecracking mechanic played by rapper Ludacris, and a race queen hottie played by terrible actress Devin Aoki.
Damn, you can't play it for long. Put that money back on the table. You know it's my next hand.
His fugitive lifestyle seems perfectly picturesque, until the FBI comes rumbling in with ridiculous anti-racing technology and holds Brian hostage, proposing that he help them take down a major drug kingpin who uses street racers to run his ill-gotten dollars from point A to point freedom. Brian agrees, but under one condition, that he be allowed to bring in a partner.
The only way I'll do this is if I get to pick the driver.
Conventional logic would assume that this would be the return of Vin Diesel.
All right, O'Connor. Who you got in mind?
This dude I grew up with in Barstow,
Who's that?
Roman Pierce.
But with him gone, we instead get Tyrese Gibson as Roman Pierce, a former friend of Brian who, now out of jail, spends most of his time rocking demolition derbies. They're not friends anymore. Then they are. Then stuff happens. Most of Too Fast plays out fairly predictably. Brian and Rome have to get in with a drug dealer, played by preternaturally evil-looking dude Cole Hauser, who is so evil, he uses rats to torture crooked cops.
It's gonna want out. The only direction it can go is south.
This being a Fast and the Furious sequel, of course, the pair do some street racing, win some cars, and then it's on. There is also the wrinkle of an undercover agent, played by a markedly less terrible actress, Eva Mendes.
Where'd you go this morning?
Went to breakfast with some friends.
She and Brian do the dance of, are we gonna fuck, for a good long while, and then I guess they sort of do, I guess. Rome and Brian suspect double crosses from all angles, so they go ahead and devise an absolutely ludicrous plan involving a bajillion street racers, ejector seats, and absolutely crackerjack timing that allows them to save the girl, save themselves, and make a little money in the process. By the time 2006 rolled around, producers had abandoned trying to get pretty much any of the original cast back and instead rolled into an all-new Fast and the Furious story featuring Sean, played by an actor one can only really describe as a genetically engineered combination of both Vin Diesel and Paul Walker into one stone-faced human, who also happened to be named Lucas Black. Sean is a rebellious American teenager who has a terrible street racing accent, and his punishment is sent to live in Japan with his naval officer father. Punishment. Japan. I want these parents. In Japan, he meets Twinkie, another American kid played by Bow Wow, thus continuing the tradition of rappers randomly appearing in Fast and the Furious movies. Twinkie teaches him about the only kind of street racing that matters in Japan: drifting. After running afoul of a Yakuza kid and wrecking a car lent to him by a local racer named Han, get accustomed to this character as he shows up again elsewhere, Sean starts working in Han's garage, where, you know, he just might learn a thing or two about a thing or two.
The Red Evo's yours. What do you mean? You're representing me now. What you think? I'm gonna let you roll in a Hyundai?
In between bouts of learning how to drift and dating said Yakuza kid's girlfriend, Sean and Han run even more afoul of the guy who is goaded into retaliation by his uncle, played by the great Sonny Chiba. This leads to a chase, a terrible fatal accident. Han, no! And eventually a challenge. One race between the Drift King, Yakuza Kid, and Sean, and the loser must leave Tokyo. Seems fair. Anyone want to take a stab at how that turns out? Tokyo Drift actually exists at the end of the Fast and the Furious timeline as we currently know it. It sets up some of what comes in the subsequent films, which actually take place before Tokyo Drift. Namely, we discover that Han and Dom were once friends.
Nice ride. I won it from my friend Han a few years ago.
I didn't know he was into American muscle.
He was when he was rolling with me.
Apart from a newfound hate of the word "the," Fast and Furious finds Dom, Letty, Han, and two new crewmates named Tigo and Rico down in the Dominican Republic and back to their old hijacking ways. But with things heating up a little too much, the crew splits, and Dom leaves Letty to pull any potential trail away from her. This backfires when Dom learns sometime later, via a letter from his sister Mia, that Letty is dead, having been murdered in Los Angeles. Dom is, understandably, displeased. He goes on a tear looking for her killer. But that's not all. Elsewhere, Brian is back as well, now working for the FBI. You know, despite that whole fugitive thing from before, it's all's forgiven.
Tell me that reinstating you wasn't a mistake.
He's currently hunting down a drug dealer named Arturo Braga. Both of their investigations lead to the same man, and a really, really awkward moment.
But he was my friend too.
You weren't anyone's friend.
Yo, can you guys talk about this later?
Eventually, the street racing thing comes around, with both Brian and Dom aiming to become a part of a squad of drivers transporting heroin for Braga across the US-Mexico border. Dom wins, Brian loses, but he's a friggin' FBI agent, so of course he finds his way into the group.
Shit, bro. Dwight has now. That's too bad about Dwight. Having the feds raid your house the same night you make the team.
Of course, things don't all go according to plan. Brian learns that Braga's general policy is to kill off any drivers under his employ once they've completed their task. And it also comes to light that Letty was working undercover. For Brian. Ugh. Then, heroin-filled Hummers, explosions, deals for pardons.
We bag Braga, you let Toretto walk.
Identity-switching heroin dealers.
He ain't Braga.
More car chases. And finally, revenge. Of course, the government, never a trustworthy entity, goes back on its word, and in the end, Dom is sent to prison. But since that wouldn't make for much of a happy ending, nor a sequel setup, a thing happens. And thus, we find ourselves eagerly anticipating where the story goes from here. The fifth film starts where Fast and Furious left off, still prior to the events of Tokyo Drift. Many characters, including Dom, Brian, Mia, Vince, Roman, Tigo, Rico, Tej, and of course Han, all make a return. Plus, now The Rock is in it.
We find them, we take them as a team, and we bring them back. And above all else, we don't ever, ever let them get in the cars.
And that'll do it for another edition of Here's What You Missed. Hopefully this expedient journey through the series has got you all caught up and ready to check out the new movie, which we'll have a review up of shortly. Once again, I've been Alex Navarro, reminding you that 10 seconds in a street racing time is a little bit more like 5 to 10 minutes in normal human time. Bro.
All right, let's do this, bro. I'm not a cop anymore, bro. Hey, bro, what's going on?
I'ma tell you, bruh.
How you doing, bro?
How we gonna do that, bruh?
We'll just do what you can do, bro. Not anymore, bro.
Show hands, bruh.
Watch this, bro.
Yeah, Roman!
Bro. Looks like we're gonna be partners, bro. Yo, Tej, what's up, bro?